今天不幸跟一个女人争论一些话题。
Women define life. Men pay the bill. Earlier today, I got into an argument with a woman, and it suddenly got me thinking about the fundamental differences between men and women. It's not necessarily about who spends more money, it's about who gets to define the standard of living. Generally speaking, a man looks at how many resources he can generate first, and only then decides what kind of life he can afford. If a man earns $700 a month, he will most likely accept living a $700 a month lifestyle, eating ordinary food, living in an ordinary apartment, and wearing his clothes for years. It's not that he doesn't know more expensive things are better. It's that he accepts a basic reality: the resources are limited, so life must be arranged within those limits. However, many women operate on the exact opposite logic. They don't determine their standard of living based on their income. Instead, they first imagine what their life should look like and then decide which standards can never be compromised. Take food, for example. A woman might believe that regular food contains additives. Regular meat isn't healthy enough, and cheap products carry potential risks. Therefore, even if she has no income at all, she feels she should still buy natural, organic, and additive-free food. If money is tight, you can eat less. But the quality must never drop because health is priceless. That sounds logical enough on the surface, but it completely dodges a cold, hard reality. What good is the healthiest food in the world if you can't eat enough to be full? If your monthly living budget is only $400, the most rational solution isn't to chase theoretically perfect food, it's to guarantee enough calories, protein, and basic nutrition within your existing budget. Standard rice, cheap eggs, and basic produce might not be perfect, but they keep you full and sustain your life. That is the optimal choice under limited resources. However, once a high quality of life is defined as something non-negotiable, affordability ceases to be her problem. Even without an income, she can stubbornly maintain that high standard, because to her, lowering her standards means mistreating herself. As for where the money comes from to maintain those standards, that becomes a problem for the man, the family, or society to solve. And so, women get to define what is healthy, refined, and dignified, while men are left to figure out how to foot the bill. There is a classic real-world example of this logic: manicures. On the surface, manicures are just about aesthetics, but long, intricate nails inherently reduce the practical functionality of your hands. Cooking, washing dishes, cleaning, and carrying heavy items suddenly become incredibly inconvenient. When a man sees manicured nails, his instinct usually isn't about whether they look pretty, it's whether those hands can still perform basic daily labor. But a woman sees something completely different. She sees a refined status, a symbol that she no longer has to be tied to the kitchen. The ultimate value of a manicure is signaling to others, my hands are not meant for manual labor. Over time, this has been rebranded into a lifestyle indicator. Historically, only the truly wealthy could afford to grow out and meticulously care for long nails because someone else was doing the physical work for them. Today, an ordinary person can spend $50 to buy that exact same sense of status, of feeling that my hands aren't for rough work, which subtly morphs into I am not just a common poor person. You can buy the manicure, but the physical labor doesn't just disappear. If one person refuses to cook, the food still needs to be made. If one person refuses to wash dishes, the dishes still need to be cleaned. And if one person refuses to lower their spending, the money still needs to be earned. What people call a refined lifestyle often doesn't mean labor has evaporated, it just means the labor and costs have been transferred onto someone else. To make this logic feel self-consistent, historical oppression against women gets repurposed for modern convenience. Historically, women couldn't get an education, couldn't inherit property, and lacked freedom in marriage. These are indisputable historical facts, but in today's gender narrative, these historical suffering points are frequently converted into a form of modern moral capital. Because women historically bore the burden of housework, a modern woman refusing to do chores is framed as an act of rebellion. Because men historically controlled family resources, a modern man paying more money is framed as a form of historical compensation. Because traditional society demanded women's sacrifice, a modern woman chasing high consumption and refusing to settle is framed as female empowerment. In this narrative, modern consumption, physical labor, and ancient history are tied directly together. First, a woman uses consumption to define the life she deserves. Then, she uses symbols like manicures to prove she shouldn't have to do low-end labor. Finally, she uses historical victimhood to prove that men ought to shoulder more of her costs. In this mindset, It's not unfair, it's simply paying off a historical debt. And so, an ordinary modern man who never enjoyed the privileges of ancient patriarchy inherits ancient male obligations. Meanwhile, a modern woman who never experienced foot binding, arranged marriages, or bans on education inherits ancient female moral credit. Many women never inherited the miserable lives of their female ancestors, yet they inherit their victim identity. And many men never inherited their male ancestors' land or power, yet they inherit their historical debts. This is why men and women are rarely on the same wavelength when it comes to quality of life. A man asks, "What can our current resources support?" A woman asks, "Why don't I deserve better?" A man believes that if income is low, standards should be lowered. First you fill your stomach before talking about organic, high-end, or additive-free food. Survival comes before luxury. A woman, on the other hand, is more likely to believe that the standard itself is non-negotiable. To her, a lack of money isn't about excessive desire, it's that the man isn't earning enough. Refusing to do physical labor isn't dodging responsibility, it's standing up against traditional gender roles. Spending beyond their means isn't reckless, it's simply refusing to settle for less. At the end of the day, these conflicts between men and women, whether over organic food, manicures, chores, or spending, are all fighting over one single question. Should your standard of living be defined by your ability to pay, or should it be defined by your imagination of what you deserve? Women can certainly eat organic food, get manicures, refuse to cook, and pursue any lifestyle they desire. But true independence doesn't mean you define the quality while a man provides the budget. Nor does it mean you refuse physical labor and use history to justify making someone else do it for you. True independence means creating enough resources yourself to support the life you want to live and personally bearing the cost of replacing the labor you refuse to do. Otherwise, this so-called refined lifestyle is nothing more than women dreaming up the vision, men working to realize it, women inheriting historical credit, and men stuck paying the modern bill.
Hey guys and girls, let's sit down today and have a real honest heart-to-heart. What I'm about to say might sting a bit, but it cuts right to the core of reality. In your daily life or while scrolling online, have you ever encountered a truly mind-boggling piece of logic? When an ordinary man earns $700 a month, he will responsibly live a $700 a month lifestyle, eating basic food and wearing durable clothes. He gets it. Resources are limited, and basic survival always comes before luxury. But nowadays, many women operate on the exact opposite logic. They start by imagining a set of non-negotiable living standards. Their food must be organic and additive-free. Their hands must have manicures to prove they don't do hard labor. And their lifestyle must be refined and dignified. As for where the money comes from or whether it's actually affordable, that's not her concern, that's a bill for the man in society to figure out. I just want to look through the screen and ask everyone today, how ridiculous has this mindset of women define the lifestyle men pay the bill become in this day and age? Plenty of people will push back with generic platitudes like health is priceless or you shouldn't settle for less. That sounds righteous enough. But real life isn't a TV drama. On a monthly living budget of $400, the most rational strategy is always securing basic calories, protein, and staying fed, demanding theoretically perfect quality while completely ignoring your actual buying power isn't pursuing a good life, it's sheer self-deception. What's even crazier is how people justify these out-of-touch spending standards. The internet has birthed a bizarre theory of historical compensation. They claim that because ancient women were oppressed, denied education, and forced to do all the domestic labor, modern women refusing to do housework is an act of rebellion, demanding high consumption is empowerment, and men paying more is just settling historical debts. Think about that for a second. Doesn't that sound completely absurd? Why should an ordinary modern man, who never inherited any ancient land or patriarchal power, be born with the obligation to pay off ancient male debts? And why should a modern woman, who never experienced foot binding, arranged marriages, or bans on education, automatically inherit ancient female moral credit? You didn't inherit the suffering of your ancestors, yet you claim their victim identity. He didn't inherit the wealth of his ancestors, yet he gets handed their bill. This isn't gender empowerment, it is the ultimate form of wanting modern freedom while demanding ancient privileges. You can spend $50 on a manicure to buy a sense of refined status that signals I don't do rough labor, But domestic chores and hard work don't just magically disappear into thin air. If you don't cook, someone else still has to prepare the meal. If you don't earn money, someone else still has to work for it. This so-called refined lifestyle is often nothing more than selfishly shifting your own labor and expenses onto the shoulders of an ordinary man. So today, just like talking with an old friend, let me leave you with a piece of advice straight from the heart. True independence never means you get to imagine a dream life while a man breaks his back to realize it for you, nor does it mean refusing to pull your own weight and dragging out historical grievances to justify making someone else clean up after you. True independence means creating enough resources yourself to support whatever lifestyle you desire, and personally bearing the cost of replacing any labor you refuse to do. If someone spends their whole life trapped in the fantasy of why don't I deserve better, while treating a man's hard-earned sweat as a given, that absurd mindset will eventually be shattered into pieces by cold, hard reality. To everyone reading this, what's your take on this phenomenon? If you think I'm making sense, leave Be Rational in Life in the comments, and let's talk about it.